As he made his way up the 3 flights, Tom thought back to his first day at BCC when Ignatius invited him to a meeting with a lawyer from another large firm who represented a competitor of Ignatius's client. Ignatius had called the meeting to explain to the lawyer why accepting his client's offer was in the competitor's best interest. The lawyer, in his mid-30s, was a pompous hotshot who kept interrupting Ignatius's presentation by saying, "With all due respect," every time he disagreed with Ignatius. The negotiations had dragged on for hours with no resolution in sight. Although Ignatius allowed the young, arrogant lawyer to interrupt him multiple times, as the sun was setting and day turned to night, Ignatius had had enough. He had risen from his chair, removed his glasses, and slowly walked over to the large window in the far corner of the conference room on the 69th floor of the Americenter Tower. A hushed silence fell over those assembled in the room. After a few seconds, which seemed more like an eternity, Ignatius, with his back still turned to his prey, began speaking with a steely edge in his voice. "A smart judge once told me that every time he hears a lawyer utter the words, 'with all due respect,' in his courtroom, he suspects that what the lawyer is actually saying is he considers himself the smartest person in the room, and everyone else is as dumb as horse excrement." It was only his first day at the firm, but Tom guessed someone of Ignatius's stature would never utter the word shit in public. Ignatius had slowly turned toward the lawyer. "So, with that in mind, let me be perfectly clear so that even you understand me. I've tolerated you interrupting me for the last time. Your client will either agree to the deal I've outlined, or will wage a proxy war that will cost your client millions, in which you will eventually lose. My client has unlimited resources and the will to fight this battle to the bitter end. At the end of the day, your client will either thrive as a subsidiary of my client, or we will bleed it dry in a war it cannot win, with you representing a worthless company and its carcass being picked apart by a long line of creditors in bankruptcy court. So, I suggest you get your client in line to sign the deal we're offering, or this meeting is over. With all due respect, of course." The room was still. The Pope had made his point without ever raising his voice. In fact, his last sentence was barely above a whisper. Ignatius Balatoni had a reputation as a gracious and elegant elder statesman, but the daggers in his eyes that night had made it clear to everyone seated around the table that he was prepared for a legal brawl. The young lawyer sat motionless, his mouth agape like a supplicant begging for mercy. By 8:00 p.m., the lawyer and his client had come to their senses, and the deal was signed just before 10. With that memory of Ignatius's fierceness and cunning power fresh in his mind, Tom quietly said a little prayer as he approached the Pope's office door and prepared to knock.